Can Arsenal do it? Can they break down a very tactically stubborn Tottenham side?
And can Manchester United put themselves in the title race? We're going to find out.
I can't believe we're talking about title races when it comes to Man United and even Arsenal. Listen, there's so much riding on both these games. This weekend is delivering two massive derbies. There's a lot of debate actually going into the last time these two teams played each other, four teams played each other, about which was the bigger derby. We're not going to delve into that too much, but we know that we've got some amazing football to enjoy. This is massive. I want to ask you immediately how you're feeling going into this derby. By the way, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Welcome to Talking Tactics. We're not going to talk about Chelsea. I'm going to spare you that today. Massive. Two teams in very different form at the moment. Yes, Tottenham have turned it around a little bit recently, but there's a sense that everyone kind of feels like they know which way this game's going to go in terms of the rhythm of the match. At least.
I mean, for me, I'm looking at Tottenham and I'm thinking you've got to take lessons from Newcastle. I know they're at home, but they're not particularly playing well. I know Crystal Palace, they obviously won 4-0, but even in the first half, once again, they still struggled. If Crystal Palace were having that maybe better striker, Ivan Toney and Mitrovic type of level striker, they probably would have scored in the first half. And individually, Tottenham in defensive situations, they're struggling. You know, even Lloris, you know, Romeo looked dodgy at times, you know, in games. Dyer, we've seen him slice it, etc. So I think they need to be collectively solid. They need to play probably with a deep defensive line, make sure they pick up those runners, learn from Newcastle in terms of tracking and cutting the passing lanes out for Odegaard. And it's not going to be pretty to watch if they want to get something out of this game at home, but that is what they have to do, I think. A lot of Tottenham fans are not confident going in.
Listen, I've got no doubt that, especially when it's an occasion like a North London derby, the crowd's behind you, I've no doubt that Tottenham might be very tempted to go punch for punch with Arsenal, and definitely could. They could, and they could win that game. But I think there's one thing we learned from Arsenal-Newcastle was that when Newcastle did try and press early in that first 10, 15, 20 minutes, Arsenal just played through them, played around them, had 5 shots in the first 5 minutes, quickly realised, let's press cautiously because we don't want to give them too much the other way. So I'm fully expecting Tottenham very early to drop into this kind of shape. Perisic and Doherty, I mean, look, it could be Emerson, but I think it will probably be Doherty. I think technically he offers more for them going forward, and they will want outlets. And then Son and Kulusevski having to drop back, and Kane's going to have to do a lot of the work to hold up the ball, to slow things down, to win some fouls so that they offer something on the counter-attack. But am I being really lazy just saying, yep, that's what we're going to get from Tottenham? Because yes, we've been used to it, but they might spring a surprise.
I think you're not, because for me, that's what they have to do to get something out of the game. Look at Arsenal in transition, how quick they are. Everybody knows their roles. They're very, you know, the chemistry is really, really solid in this team. And for me, if you're not going to go defensive, if you're Tottenham, you're going to leave yourself exposed. I'm looking at the areas in terms of, you know, Perisic in particular against Saka, Doherty against Martinelli. I'm not confident in those two squaring up to those wingers, especially if they're caught in transition, pace-wise, etc. So they need to be compact, they need to be very narrow, and they need to do what Newcastle did, but it's not easy to do what Newcastle did. They have the best defence in the league. They were they did their due diligence. They were very solid. They concentrated completely for the full 90. And if you even switch off for a moment against Arsenal and you give Odegaard that little yard, then suddenly you've got problems.
Yeah, this is going to be really fascinating because let's have a look at some of the matchups early on, and we start putting Arsenal into the kind of positions that we see them getting in often in games. You've got Thomas Partey at the base, and you sort of, well, as we've seen, Zinchenko will come inside and offer another option, and you've got that back three that builds. Now, some of the early battles I'm seeing, obviously Arsenal want to congest that midfield. Zinchenko helps with that, Partey at the base, they do things. I think an interesting one already is going to be Xhaka and those underlapping runs with Romero. I'm very interested to see how much he's willing to actually commit to attacking that space in the way he has done all season. You're away in a North London derby, there might be a temptation to slot a little bit closer to Partey and Zinchenko, not give too much away, make sure that Spurs don't dominate those areas when Kane drops in. But you've got two players, Romero and Xhaka, that I think on their day can get quite heated.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a really interesting battle as well. If Xhaka is to bomb on that much as well, we know that when Martinelli and Saka stretch the pitch as they do, they're creating one-on-one battles with Doherty and Perisic. So the way those Arsenal midfielders underlap is going to be a big part of the game and how Tottenham try and answer that with obviously having three centre-backs as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a yellow card in this for those two, 100%.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Outside of that as well, I think Nketiah, the form that he's in, is something that I'm looking at closely, especially with Lloris. Will Tottenham try and play out from the back? I wouldn't advise it personally. From what I'm watching in terms of, you know, Lloris and his distribution, he's very shaky. I think if Arsenal press high up the pitch, then I think they could catch them out. Of course, there is always the worry of a transition. When you look at Tottenham's midfielders, they're not exactly the most attacking. Højbjerg does pop up with a goal or two. Basuma, not at the moment this season, really at the races. So I wouldn't be too worried about Xhaka, bombing forward, especially if you've got Zinchenko in there for cover, because yeah, Tottenham, for me, in transition, if Kane can get the ball and release it, we saw against Palace in the second half, he can let Son go and really, if Son actually finishes, then you've potentially got a problem. But I do trust, physically and pace-wise, Gabriel, Saliba, Partey to deal with those problems. Especially with the way Tottenham are playing at the moment.
Look, Tottenham might have a shape that can really stifle Arsenal, especially in the final third there, but they've got to offer something going the other way as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are moments in this game where Arsenal drop into a deep shape as well, because we've seen it sometimes on the road. Arteta's happy to say to his team, look, you don't have to always press. Once they cover the halfway line, drop into a deep block. But when Arsenal are on the front foot and going forward, it's about what they offer on the counter-attack. And yes, Son's going to have... Oh, let's get rid of that. Son's going to have a lot of work to do, dropping back Kulusevski. We know their work rate can be phenomenal, but it's also that run and making sure that they're sending Gabriel and Son going the other way. Now, Gabriel and White, they've been in good form, actually, especially Gabriel since signing his contract's been very, very good. But those diagonal runs where it takes one or two passes, that can just catch a team like Arsenal's just concentration, And I wonder whether, again, it sounds all very predictable. We've seen it before, but it can be immensely effective. They are ready and equipped to deal with this Arsenal side.
Yeah, I think Thomas Partey's going to sit on Harry Kane. I think that should be how it pans out in terms of those two in a battle, to kind of pick him up, stop the playmaking, stop the passes. Harry Kane has literally been the ball progressor. He's been the distributor. He's been the goal scorer. I saw him at times against Crystal Palace picking up the ball in midfield and actually driving and getting past players. That's how important he is at this moment. It seems like every single game I watch, he's getting more and more responsibility. Saliba's got a big part to play in this game because at times he has looked a little bit dodgy. He's given away a penalty, loss of concentration against Brighton. He's going to be kind of that marshal in the middle, and he won't maybe have anyone to man mark. And that's therefore, you haven't got someone directly in front of you to kind of focus on. You've got to kind of make sure your concentration is intact. And like you said, look out for those inverted runs just in case. But yeah, I think it's tough to see Tottenham how they're going to... I mean, Son's going to have to really step up. He's been poor. I know he got a goal against Palace, but he missed a chance before that. He hasn't been in good form this season. He's really got to step up. I remember the game he played at the Emirates and he wasn't great.
No.
So, yeah, it's a big, big game for Son. Kulusevski's just coming back. We don't know how rusty he's going to be.
Well, this is the thing. We've just chucked him in. I mean, Benton could be playing as well. So there are a few options to spring surprises. Whereas with Arsenal, it's a little more predictable what they're going to go with. And that could play into Tottenham's hands for sure.
No, I think Arsenal's lineup, you could literally just read out for team sheet at this point. You know exactly who's going to play. But I don't think that's a bad thing. The chemistry's there. Everybody understands their role. The only danger Arsenal have when I was looking at that Newcastle game, for me, is that when you look at that bench at the moment, there's nobody that you really hang your hat on to bring on. So if it isn't going right against Tottenham or they do go a goal down, who do you bring on to change the game? Is, Fabio Vieira, has he earned his stripes after the goal, the assist against Oxford?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But, they don't have too much on the bench, Arsenal, to change the game if it's not going well. Bear I say it, Tottenham don't have much either. When I've looked at their bench, sometimes I've shed a tear for them. So it is tough.
Yeah, I guess it will be really on the first 11s to do the jobs for the team. Just very quickly before we move on to the Manchester derby, of course, for everything we've just talked about it tactically, and it will be, I think this is a little bit more predictable than the other one, which we're going to come on to. Yeah. There's a whole psychological element here. No matter where we are on the table, no matter where they are, and we know the styles of football, we can almost predict how it's going to go in terms of rhythm and pattern. Yeah. But the one thing is that Arsenal's record in North London derbies away from home is poor. I don't think we've won there since 2014. We never won at the new ground, but away at Tottenham, I think it was Thomas Rosicky that last got us a 1-0 win. Even that we were lucky to win. I think there's a psychological element, and maybe getting on the ball for that first 10 minutes, playing it around, having a couple shots early for Arsenal will settle their nerves and hopefully make it feel like just another game.
Yeah, no, that is the one thing that is really in Tottenham's favour, is the home crowd. So I'm looking forward to see how this pans out, but listen, there's going to be bookings, I know that for a fact. Yeah. I want to see a tasty, scrap.
I think it will be, and I think that's the one thing Arsenal need to avoid it being. Will that be the same for the Manchester derby? Man United versus Man City. Again, we've gone with some predicted 11s, but very difficult to predict. I think more so than the North London derby. Okay, maybe Emerson for Doherty, or is Kulusevski fit? Is Benton fit? Those are more the discussions. Whereas here, you've had Shaw been playing really well at centre-back. Will Ten Hag be tempted to go with that again? But, obviously, Lissandro Martinez got some minutes. Dalot now back. It looks like Wan-Bissaka was doing quite well. Yeah. That midfield, you mentioned maybe Eriksen coming in. Yeah. And then you've got Man City, which is You know, is it a back three? Is 4-3-3? Is it 4-2-3-1? Is De Bruyne going to be close to Haaland? This is going to be very, very interesting. Talk us through what you're expecting.
This is fascinating, this one. I love it. Tactically, it's brilliant. I remember the game 6-3. You know, they were absolutely dragged apart Manchester United. And we spoke about Eriksen actually on this very show, not picking up the runners from Foden in the midfield. Personally, I wouldn't have Eriksen in there with Casemiro. I'd look to put Fred, especially against Manchester City. Yes, Manchester United at home. Yes, they're in good form. Yes, they want to put themselves in a title race. They might be really confident, but you still need to respect the fact that this is Manchester City. They are a better team. And for me, I don't think Fred, you know, takes a lot away from the team. Yes, Eriksen's got that brilliant pass in him. You can bring him off the bench as maybe an outlet for creativity.
So would you take Eriksen out?
I would, because I feel like Casemiro needs help. I wouldn't just, you know, in most games that they've played, you know, at home, maybe they play Wolves or Bournemouth, they have allowed Casemiro to just do completely all of the defensive work in that midfield and kind of chaperone everybody, intercept balls with his chest, etc. But when you've got all of the attacking midfielders that Man City have, you need help, and I think Fred is the perfect person for that job.
So I agree with that, but one slight tweak. My change would be Bruno out for Eriksen. Now, I know Bruno's improved a lot under Ten Hag. No doubt about that. But I think Eriksen just gives you a little bit more security, experience, composure on the ball. Listen, Fernandes has plenty experience as well. But I would just be trusting in Eriksen a little bit more. I know he's played deeper this season for Man United, but in a 10 or even in a 3, if you think that's going to match City a little bit better, I don't know. I would be looking at Eriksen. But I do agree. I think it is crucial to get Casemiro and Fred in there just to match them for energy, just to be able to cover that ground, especially if it's going to be a 2 that having to go side to side to match, you know, the brilliance of Rodri, De Bruyne, Silva. It could be Gundogan, it could be Foden there. If Jack Grealish starts, they have so many options. One of the things that I found very interesting about the way City approached the Chelsea game at the Bridge was, and I'm not going to lie, I thought it felt to me like Guardiola looked at the way Arsenal won at the Bridge with Zinchenko coming into midfield and was trying to do a very similar thing by having a back 3 that builds, and then Rodri and Silva sort of at the base, sort of playing, and you had that sort of 3-2-5 shape. But we think they're going to go for something a little bit more traditional, I guess, in a back 4 with 2 actual fullbacks. But how is this going to look when City venture into Man United's half? When
I saw them, there's 2 matches. The Bridge, Cancelo is playing like right wing back, Foden left wing back, similar to what they did at Anfield. For me, I was a bit uncomfortable even looking at it. First half, they were dominated by Chelsea in possession. Then the second match, you look at City, and they were a lot more of last season's City. They played with 2 normal fullbacks in Gomez and Walker. You know, both of them playing on their stronger foot, overlapping the likes of Foden, Palmer. You had also Mahrez on the right-hand side as well. It just looked like a more fluid City. There was no Haaland, there was no De Bruyne, Alvarez was in there, and it did look like a City of old, and we got cut apart. Now, I don't expect them to go with that exact same team. Of course, Haaland, De Bruyne comes back in. But I'm looking at that City team and I'm thinking, try and stick to the similar principles out wide that you put in over the weekend. And if you are going to play Cancelo, which I think they will, because Anthony obviously cutting on his left foot, Cancelo can cut in as well.
That's a good point.
Cancelo's not great defensively, but it would be a big game for Gomez to be thrown into in a Manchester derby away from home. But then you have Foden on the left to hold the width, and you have Cancelo tucking in. Don't go with 2 right-footers on the left-hand side cutting in and not get any width. Palmer did the job on the left-hand side at the weekend. I think Foden can do the job. And earlier on in the season, Foden was making a lot of runs off of Haaland in behind, which is what Palmer did on the weekend, and he got quite a few goals out of it. Mahrez is in really good form. Last two games, 3 goals, penalty, beautiful free kick, back post. So I think he deserves to start. And De Bruyne, Haaland, these are big game players. For me, you've got to put them in there. But I do think Silva deserves to be in that team as well. I think he was brilliant against Chelsea at the weekend. And he's just such a quality player. And if it is the last season, squeeze the sponge, enjoy. Do you know what I mean? So what a player.
I think you're so right about the balance of this side here, for example, Cancelo and Foden. And I think you can see similarities in that with Mahrez and Walker. Now, what do I mean by that? When you've got a right-footed left-back who wants to come inside, get on the ball, wants to play, wants to almost be one of those deep-line playmakers, can also underlap, I think you're right. It's important you have a left-footer in Foden who can then overlap the other way. And you're asking Dalot, well, are you going to deal with the underlap coming inside? And if you do, and if Cancelo does drag you inside, when Bernardo Silva opens his body shape up, gives it wide to Foden, Foden's got a free run at running them. He was brilliant in that role in the first Manchester derby at the Etihad, absolutely tore them apart. And I think you've got that on the other side a little bit too, in that Mahrez, whenever he gets the ball, he wants to pin the fullback down. He wants to you know he's going to drop a shot. You know there's going to be a little bit of trickery, and you're just waiting for it to happen. He's one of the best in terms of his first touch, and that kind of like making you wait. You know, what's he going to do? But on that other side, a Walker can overlap. We know he's not done that as much in the last couple of years. Actually, started by Gareth Southgate. He's been slotting into a more central role in distributing. But like anything, a shape can change. A Walker overlaps, and you just revert to another sort of back three to cover. I think those little combinations are going to be key to City, because I do think United will be quite stubborn. They beat Arsenal and Liverpool by just having a very stubborn shape. They didn't go to a back three or anything. They just congested in midfield, organised, and just kept things narrow.
Hit them in transition.
I
think for me, if we move Walker back, I think because Rashford is in such ridiculous form and Anthony's not, polar opposites in terms of the two players. Rashford is carrying that Manchester United attack. Again, against Everton, he got an assist. He was involved in the own goal, got a goal himself. I think Walker might be a little bit more on the reserve. And that back three there, Laporte moves to the left, you've got Stones in the middle, Walker, and then De Bruyne could make those overlapping runs on the right for Mahrez and put those crosses in, and that's how you kind of double up on Shaw. And that's why, for me, Fred is crucial to play over Eriksen, because if you have De Bruyne on that right-hand side, which he always drifts over to, you need someone who's going to get out to him quickly, close down. Eriksen's not going to do that. Cancelo can tuck in with Rodri, form a double pivot as well if they want to do that in build-up play. So I think for me, that's how it has to go for Manchester City, and I think Silva will push up in that Gundogan role like you have them, and Silva and maybe Foden could even interchange. We saw him and Palmer doing that a little bit, but of course, you know, they have a ridiculous amount of talent. Who even cares if it's Silva or Foden? You know, interchanging. Same thing. You know, they're just two quality players. So Anthony, big game for him, because I haven't been that impressed with him recently when I've been watching Manchester United games. He did get a goal, so maybe that will get his confidence up against Everton. But he has struggled. Looks a bit predictable. But first season, so you give him his time.
You're so right. I mean, this could be a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, huge.
You know, Anthony, Martial, Rashford, and Guardiola has had a history of sometimes just going man for man and just going, that's fine.
Rodri plays centre-back for Spain. Maybe he drops a bit deeper if Martial, if they want to make it a 4v3 as well.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But the other thing you're so right about is the options they've got. I mean, just having a little look here. I've pulled Rodri out by accident. We just come across. I mean, you're right. It could be Gundogan for Bernardo Silva. We know he makes those runs to the back post. They might feel that cross to the back post with Gundogan's runs might be a way of breaking down a stubborn United side. And you might have Mahrez out for Bernardo Silva then on the right, and you could even have Jack Grealish, who I've not even got in the list of names there. I mean,
on the left,
you've even got Julian Alvarez. So, yeah, this is, I mean, of all the games, this is the one that I'm really fascinated about. Not just because of everything we've mentioned in terms of what Man City might do and how United respond to that, but also United have been on good form. They've been trying to get more on the ball. They've been, you know, out-shooting their opponents. They've been showing a degree of dominance and control in games. Is Ten Hag really going to want to move away from that? And if he's building a long-term project, one of the things you sometimes got to do is take the short-term L to go, okay, but we need to show that we can play a certain way against Man City. A little bit like, apologies to use the Arsenal example, but when we lost to Man City 2-1, New Year's Day last year, we lost 2-1, penalty, sending off, all that. But we all came away from it going, that's what Arteta wants to achieve. That first half, that first hour of football. And maybe that's an opportunity for Ten Hag as well, just to go, we might lose this game, but let's show City we can go punch for punch and cause them a load of problems.
He could do that, but it is a Manchester derby. And I think the Old Trafford faithful, they need their win. They need their win. And he's shown already this season that he is willing to sacrifice a little bit of what he wants to get a result. I think for him, he'll get his way eventually once he gets his full team in. But I think because Manchester United, for me, looks so weak in attack outside of Rashford, I think you do kind of need to play the game a little bit and play the occasion and make sure that you nullify City, but also Man United have done and shown in transition they can cause problems. I'm not sure about Bruno versus Eriksen. It's going to be very interesting because of Bruno's kind of shithousery in a way in a game like this. You could miss it. You could miss it. It could go either way. So Bruno versus Eriksen is an interesting one. I would go with Bruno. You would go with Eriksen. We'll see what they think in the comments.
Yeah, there you go. Let us know in the comments, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this. We tried to tactically break down what the Arsenal-Tottenham game could look like. That feels a little bit more predictable, though, when it comes to North London derbies, as we said. Maybe the rhythm of the game feels predictable in one sense, but the recent record, it suggests it's predictable in another. So let's have a little look at what happens then. Of course, the Manchester derby. Does Ten Hag go for it? Does he go punch for punch with Manchester City? What will City do? Guardiola was overthinking a little bit at the bridge before he turned things around and they got the win. Is he going to overthink it again in this game, or is he just going to go with what's worked? But then again, What does that even look like? They've got so many great options. Who knows? Let us know all your thoughts in the comment section. A big thanks to Matisse, as always, for joining. Go check out his channel. Of course, you know all about it. Go check out, you know, everything he does on the Big Six and all that. And of course, we'll be back after to break it all down when we've got the results, and maybe we'll reflect on how close we were to getting this
How
right.
genius we are.
Yeah. He said it, not me. All right, catch you on the next one, guys.